we've all discussed at a high level what the roadmap could look like for you and the organization adopting it. But what it essentially translates into is this feedback loop or a high level architecture that can then be broken down into those simple components that you can then strengthen or work upon. So this is just a sample. Individuals viewing this are encouraged to put their own spin on it. But at a high level, what we are trying to communicate is that the zero trust data plane is where most of the activity happens. You've got your identities or the subject who are trying to access something. It's centered around policies, good posture management. And if you look at it from NIST point of view, they would say it is your policy decision point and policy enforcement points, right? That's where the brain of zero trust is living. But what this brain needs is this brain needs to be fed information like security practitioner. We always need to learn from CISSP, learn from other places, right? So what this brain needs, it needs a sensor or a data repository where it's getting all its feeds, evolving threats, some place who is interpreting, ensuring that those false positives are really identified and siloed, and then all of that at different levels is then being fed back into this brain, who then takes into account everything and then makes a decision in terms of saying, hey, you're Prabnayar, well known, anything that you say in terms of this is golden, and then we would implement it, versus, hey, you're not really well known, we don't trust you, we don't know what's your source of authorization, so any information that you give is subjected to scrutiny, right? So it's as simple as that, making sure that the brain understands the risk, evolving risk, and then is able to interpret that at a high level and then define uh, what needs to be protected and how. And then if the request needs to be rejected, it will do so.
So you mean to say that, like if we go by the general architecture is we're starting with the endpoint SIEM, then XDR engine, SOC. Now what we did is to just frame that architecture with the right data on the right time, by the right context, we introduce zero trust.
Exactly, you're spot on. So what we've done is, rather than having a flat structure in terms of people accessing something based on predefined rules, what we are doing is we've got predefined rules, but the ability to evolve those rules in real time with the threat intelligence and this feedback loop that we've incorporated. So it's an always evolving process and on its own. So you don't have someone going in there and updating the firewall rules every time. The engine is smart enough to decide based on the parameters that you've defined, right? So for example, someone who's being looked at from what is their IP address that they're using to access, do they have updated antivirus, what version of the OS are they using, have they connected from this location previously, is the certificate on their device correct? All of those good stuff we used to do previously as well, but you could have add-ons as well, right? Does this guy have antivirus installed? What's the posture of this device? The IP address, has that been used for malicious activity in the past? Are they using VPN? When was this host last seen at this location? So for example, if someone was in Australia logging in this morning at 8 a.m., the next connection is coming from Germany the next time, right? And that's within 4 hours. The policy engine and the process can be updated to make it time bound as well. It's not just that you've jumped into different locations, but it's the time difference between those requests and the places that you're coming from can also be a factor in terms of accepting that request or denying it. That's just an example of how things could evolve.
I never think from that perspective, because I was an impression that, okay, this is the architecture we validate, but I never thought from a SOC perspective, this is how the zero trust is going to be placed. And thanks for bringing this particular diagram in the session. And I'm sure those who
Yeah,
watching this
and
video, I'm sure they also get this insight about how actually, data is validated by zero trust and then it moved to SOC. So that's a great insight actually.
yeah, and as I said, right, we all focus on the 5 pillars that have been defined, but operations, which is monitoring and logging, as well as SOAR or orchestration and infrastructure as a code or automation, are all very key pillars that support the 5 core pillars or tenants, right?
Understood.
So we can't have an organization that doesn't have monitoring in place but still wants to have a very comprehensive zero trust, because they're two very important integral part of the zero trust model that you would have.
That's a great insight.
Yeah, so once you've got the desired architecture look, then you can start filling these components in and saying, okay, this is where I want to put this tool or this technology or this architecture, this structure, and that's your filling of the blueprint, right? Now, in the end, we've all discussed what are the drivers, what are some of the key capabilities, how we would map the roadmap, and then build that solid ground level architecture as well as the structure around adopting zero trust. So, what is it that the organization can expect as an outcome of zero trust, right? The biggest one is scaling and agility. So all of these components together, A, complement each other. I gave you the example of vulnerability management. Again, that's something that's giving the organization the ability to scale fast, be agile, not spend too much resources on vulnerability management, but use that in other areas. You've got a cyber mindset. You understand that it's a business driven decision, and then cyber is complementing business. You understand security of different supply chains. Again, protecting your cloud, protecting third party vendors, protecting your environment from breaches that happen on those third parties as well is a key component. Again, visibility is a great way of ensuring that you are aware of those architecture patterns. um, Seamless partnership, you've got those principles that then help make sure that the pillars operate in harmony with each other and overlap. So that's a great partnership. Again, partnership at third party levels as well. Secure or adoption of digital technology. Again, I think this is an underlining benefit of everything else that goes in, and then reducing your operational overhead. The example that we just saw with vulnerability management is great in terms of how you would look at zero trust from that point of view, right? So these are some of the benefits. Again, the slide could have been filled with a lot more, but I encourage the viewers of this video to go out there and understand what those key drivers for their business is and what is it that they would get at the end if the goal of that zero trust model is achieved. Now, some of these benefits can be understood from day one of implementing zero trust. For example, scaling and agility is something that you would see early on, but other benefits might take a long time to realize, for you to actually see their benefits in. So that's where what I say is zero trust is a continuous process. There's no end sometimes to this journey, but you have to be patient because it's like stacking one thing at a time and then going through that process of making sure that things fall in place. And it's a hard process sometimes, right? But again, that's what distinguishes our profession with others, that there is grind sometimes, but there is light at the end of the tunnel as well. So make sure that you're focusing on the right things. You focus on people, you focus on risk, you focus on those blueprints, continuous alignment, and then visibility. And that is how this illusion of zero trust can sometimes be achieved.
And this is the most important insight of this part is continuous process, because as you said earlier also, that just implementing something doesn't make sense. You need to monitor what is basically the end goal. And to be frank, I like two part about this PPT. One is I never seen that, the framework you talk about. So that is the one thing I really like that. And second is, I took the screenshot of that because yeah, I'm going to use for LinkedIn. So one is that the part called desires state of architecture or SOC. Amazing. That was
Yeah,
amazing. I never seen such diagrams anywhere. And I think it's your own reference architecture that you have used. Correct me if I'm wrong. And the second one was
yeah.
the business
So
line zero trust approach. Yeah.
yeah. So it's just how you think about it. And again, there might be better approaches out there. So the more people who've done this, maybe implemented it multiple times, they've got more insights. So what I say is that this is just my view of what zero trust should look like. Again, if some of our viewers have better approaches, feel free to share with us. It's good to see that people are implementing and using different ways of tackling this beast. And I'm always up for learning and understanding how we can solve different challenges different in different ways. And if there are more efficient ways, yes, absolutely, more than keen on understanding and looking at how we could incorporate that for the next customer that we try and implement zero trust.
But really, Pushbai, this is a really great insight you have shared on this particular reference document and this topic, because as you know that, okay, just explaining the theory does not make sense, but how it practically works, it basically get the idea. So is it possible, can you just go back to that slide of that you have talked about this framework, which is uh, we have a process, procedures, framework and all that. Go back.
uh, this one.
Back. Yeah, yeah. Okay. And can you just go next? Sorry. Seventh. Next. Next. Acha, is it possible, just if you can give one case study, okay, to map this as a reference, not this one.
This one.
This is no, the back. This one, yeah, roadmap. If it possible, just high level. matlab, if I talk about a startup or any company and it's in hybrid industry, so how it
Yep.
can quickly drive.
Yep. So an example for a hypothetical organization, right? Um, if they operate in multiple environments, maybe on premise in cloud, right? How the approach would be that you do a gap analysis.
Mm-hmm.
There are couple of good references that we also used when we were working with the specific client. Obviously, confidentiality kicks in, and then I can't disclose a lot of that information.
Yeah.
But what our approach was that we looked at references from CISA. They've got some very good references around the zero trust model and then pillars and what their maturity looks need to look like. Also incorporated and read through a lot of NIST documentation, which in the last few months has also evolved a lot. And then there is a zero trust certificate from CSA as well. They've got a lot of good reading material for you to learn for free. And if you go for the exam, they've also got four, I think, documents that you can review, which are really great.
Okay.
Now, what we did was we started off with doing a risk assessment for this organization, or in our hypothetical case, the first approach would be to do that risk assessment, understand where the gaps are. So, for example, in a lot of cases, what we've seen is the risk is around you don't have a lot of filtering from that east west traffic point of view. So
Yeah.
segregation is there when you go into the network, but east west, nothing, right? From an identity point of view, with adoption of cloud, you get privilege access or root access to those SaaS applications or your public cloud environment as well, right? How do you then integrate your identity platform to make sure that those essentially root accounts or privilege identities are secure, right? So you may need to integrate a privilege account management solution or maybe come up with a strategy as well to be able to incorporate. Now, from a cloud point of view, you can adopt a lot of policies that apply either at in Azure tenant level or in AWS at an organization level and say, hey, I don't want my organization resource to operate outside of India, right? So you can then have policies that define those. but those
Hmm.
are all solutions that you talk about at a later stage. The first gap that you would fill in is, I don't want my organization individuals to create resources in the cloud environment outside of India, right? That's your gap that you've identified, that individuals can do that. Now, what that would signify is that there might be shadow IT in your environment, or there might be a case of unrestricted access, or you don't have monitoring in place that captures where these resources are being deployed, right? What it does is it opens up your environment to a larger risk, uh, where you don't have essentially have control over the environment. As a result, you don't have control over the policies as well as the underlying control that need to be implemented for the environment, right? So those are all gaps that you would identify. Then based off those gaps, you would do an approach around, what do I need to do first? If your organization is going through, for example, cloud transformation, your approach would be cloud first. So if everything is going to cloud, from a security point of view, protecting data on cloud, data that's transferred to cloud, and then making sure that there's limited shadow IT or control in the environment is my key focus, right? So that's where
Hmm.
you establish your goals and objectives and say, I've got a gap in terms of shadow IT in cloud. I've got a cloud transformation program in place. If you don't control it now, it can become a bigger problem, right? So that's your goal or objective in terms of saying cloud first strategy, secure cloud first strategy, right? So that's the goal that you're now working with. Now, what this does is it helps you define the zero trust framework. Now, in that framework, you would say, in cloud, when we are operating, I need to implement or be able to control XYZ. I need to have a strategic approach around it, a governance layer, defining processes, defining ways of doing things at scale, and then with the complement of security at scale as well, right? So that's going to be your framework. You would say, I would try and leverage automation. If you're using automation for deployment in cloud, that can then again be used for implementing security in cloud as well, right? So that's where you define the framework in terms of saying, how do I want to approach and achieve the objectives in the previous point, right? Or from the previous point. And then that's where then you define, okay, these are the problems that I'm trying to solve. These are my key goals. These are the tools that I would use. How do I now prioritize, right?
Hmm.
So, for example, in cloud, you say, anytime I'm deploying, I'm using automation. Can I bring in tooling during SDLC? Now, am I doing SAST? Am I doing DAST? At what key point should I be doing this to make sure that my development is safe? Then, when developers try and push to environments, are they all segregated, right? Segregation at the environment level, then am I giving them predefined tooling to work with? Do they have a free handle on picking anything that they want, right? Do I have predefined AMIs? Do I have automation scripts that tell them what needs to be done and define variations or flag variations where they are, right? So there's a concept called drift detection in clouds formation as well, where it would tell you that someone came in and changed this, which is not the default setting. So you would automatically know or get alerted, right? So that's where you identify your assets, what you want to protect, and then using the framework you define, you solidify, and then start implementing those controls in, right? Baking those controls in, especially in cloud environments. And then what you've got is, you turn on visibility, you turn on logging, you ingest that, you have a SIEM solution that can help you monitor. You've got a baseline around how you would detect false positive as well as what happens in the environment. Now, logging and monitoring in the cloud can really be easy, but also costly at the same time, right? So that's where, if you've identified a goal in your environment, or the business driver is, can I do security in a cost efficient way? That's where that complexity might pitch in, right? So then you might have a trade off where you say, I want to enable all the logs, but I don't have the money to do so, right? So then you identify what are those key logging capabilities that you need. For example, in AWS, you may not want to skip on guard duty logs because they are valuable. They are your IDS, IPS capability. You want to understand what's happening, where those risks are. Is someone accessing your S3 data trying to exfiltrate it? It will automatically show you that event, right? Now, that's where you put your money in and make the best use of it. And then the last option, or the last step is in this is educate and train your people. Train your developers to use the standard CI/CD pipeline. Train your infrastructure people or platform people to use automation and not use ClickOps. ClickOps is one way of going away from your baselines that you've created, right? And that's where environments get messed up. So that's at a high level how you would approach. I know the example went into a very cloud specific way, but it's just showing you at a high level like what you could do if the organization is going through a cloud transformation and then still wanting to adopt zero trust, right? Again, there's a deeper layer to it, far more technical, in terms of implementing controls around segregation. Um, at a lower level, zero trust, you could also have private connectivity. For example, in AWS, when you have your applications connecting to your S3, you would essentially want to leverage AWS defined dedicated connectivity and not internet, right? So you could have VPC endpoints or VPC internal connections that would help you leverage that. But those are lower level designs that you would want to put in, right? So in a nutshell, what we want to do is make sure you understand your gaps, make sure that you align an approach in terms of what those gaps signify as strategy, and then define tooling, platform, process that needs to be in place to be able to achieve those outcomes that you're looking for. And then always train people. There is no reason to have the best in the breed tool when people do not want to use it or they
That's true.
don't feel empowered to use it.
So was the reason. So that's why I know, because this was an interesting part, and it connecting with the case study, it gave the more insight, because I had one question because I moved to the next slide. So that's why I thought, I'm sorry, I
No,
dragged
no,
you
that's
for an.
all good. No, it's all good. And I'm glad if this case study helps someone else also understand at a high level how the strategy would really evolve into an operational model for an organization. And a lot of organizations going through cloud journey may be able to benefit, or individuals who are part of that journey may be able to pick some of those points that then benefit them in some way, right? So really happy to have shared that example. Again, it's not to say that this is the only approach. It's a framework that people can pull up and then use it to their advantage with different mix and matches. So feel free to experiment, but make sure that the experiment always starts with a gap analysis, because it could be a very costly experiment if it's not directed in the right way.
And zero trust itself, still it's in a evolved stage. It's not something, okay, everyone having a complete visibility. I think after this particular podcast, the exam, see, for me, it was completely new. The architecture framework is set, to be frank. So if I get this insight with a person who already active in security, I'm sure those who are working in the architect, for them, it's a new insight. I'm sure, Pushpa, it will rock. Definitely, it will rock. And
Yeah. Thank you, Prab, for that feedback.
no, definitely. And one more important thing, those who watching this video, this is the second podcast with Pushpinder Bhai, and this guy basically having a combination of great practical insight and management. So, our previous video was hit, and I believe this video is going to be hit. And this guy is in core into cloud security, to be frank. So do let me know in the comment box that shall we disturb again Pushpinder on the cloud security new topics, which he share the insights. See, for me, this online session is just like a gunpoint. I can ask anything to the speaker on this online session. So definitely on the matter of respect, he will not say no. But if you want the new topic inside on cloud security from Pushpinder, please drop your suggestion in the comment box so that we can able to improve this podcast better. So Prashant, this is actually, for me, this made my weekend actually great. Sunday make it great because I'm also working as a VCSO, and one of the recent case study I had discovered about zero trust, and this was completely different from what I have seen today, to be frank, and it makes sense, to be frank. So I have a meeting next week, and I'm sure I'm going to use the same template, same framework to give a pitch, and if thing goes well, and definitely going to ping you.
Yeah, I'll be more than happy if this small piece of slide helps you in your next session as a VSI. So would be off the charts if that happens. But let me know how that goes. And if you have got any questions, feel free to reach out.
No, I got a great insight from that. Thanks, Pushpendra bhai. So, do you have any last minute pointer before winding up this podcast?
Well, I hope I've covered everything. But again, as you said, feel free to reach out to me or Prab as well. All of us are really here to help you. But one thing that I would say or try and wrap this up is there's a lot of hype in the industry and vendor driven solution. Make sure that your choice is based on what's good for the organization and not just going with the hype. This is a very strategic or a business driven decision. It is not a vendor or a tool driven decision. So cut the hype, look at what it is that your organization is after, and then go for it.
Thank you so much, Pushpendra bhai, and looking forward for more sessions like that. So this
Yeah.
is all from our side team. If you new to the channel, do subscribe to my YouTube channel and click on the bell icon to make sure you should not miss the future videos on a similar topic. Thank you so much. Good day. Bye.